The Galactic Council had long believed in order. War was an outdated concept, something only primitive species indulged in. Diplomacy, trade, and careful negotiations were the foundation of interstellar civilization. That was until the Zervians came. The Zervians were an empire of warlords, monstrous, battle-hardened conquerors who thrived on bloodshed. They had torn through dozens of civilizations, razing planets, enslaving entire species, and breaking every treaty that had ever been signed. When they reached the core systems, the Council did what they always did. They sent envoys. The Zervians sent back their heads. In desperation, the Council searched for an answer. They needed warriors. Not just soldiers trained for combat, but a species that understood war. One that had war engraved into its history, its culture, and its very soul. That's when they found humans. At first, the Council was hesitant. Humans were a young race, barely out of their own solar system, living on a backwater planet they called Earth. Their technology was laughable, their presence in the galactic community minimal. But when the scholars and analysts began digging into human history, they uncovered something terrifying. Humans were born for war. They were the only known species that had never known a time without conflict. Their past was drenched in blood, their civilizations forged through battle. Their greatest leaders celebrated not for peace, but for conquest. Unlike the Zervians, who were warriors by biology, humans had perfected war by choice. They built weapons that could destroy entire continents, developed tactics that had won against impossible odds, and refined combat strategies in ways no other species ever had. But what made them truly terrifying was their adaptability. Humans didn't just fight. They learned. They evolved. They took the best tactics from every enemy and made them their own. They turned their weaknesses into strengths, and their desperation into victory. The Council approached Earth with an offer. Save the galaxy and earn a place among the stars. The humans agreed. But what the Council didn't realize was that they hadn't just recruited soldiers. They had unleashed war gods. The Galactic Council sat in uneasy silence as they watched the footage again. The holographic projection flickered, showing the smoking ruins of what was once a thriving city. Charred bodies littered the streets, their forms unrecognizable, some crushed beneath the metal husks of destroyed Council war machines. The Zervians had attacked Osiris-9, a core world, and left no survivors. High Chancellor Varric Tan turned his many eyes towards the assembled representatives. This is the third planet they have raised in the last 2 cycles. Our peacekeepers were annihilated. The Zervian Empire does not negotiate. They do not take prisoners. They exist to conquer. We have no force in this galaxy capable of stopping them. Murmurs of fear and defeat rippled through the chamber. Then, a voice cut through the tension. There is one species that might be able to fight them. The speaker was Ambassador Zell Rowe, a reptilian diplomat from the minor world of Kessari Prime. He tapped a panel, and a new holographic display appeared, showing a blue and green planet. Humans, he said. The name meant little to most in the chamber. Earth was barely a footnote in the galactic archives. A young species technologically behind, insignificant. The Rixian delegate scoffed. The primates? They are children in the grand scale of the cosmos. How could they stand against a force that has shattered the mightiest of our fleets? Zelro's reptilian lips curled into something resembling a smile. Because they are not children in the art of war. He tapped the panel again, and this time the display changed. It no longer showed Earth as it was today, but as it had been throughout its long, bloody history. The room darkened, and the holograms flickered to life. The Mongol hordes sweeping across entire continents, led by Genghis Khan, slaughtering millions. The Roman legions, conquering vast territories, perfecting the art of war through discipline and ruthless efficiency. The world wars, tanks rolling over the ruins of cities, nuclear fire consuming entire populations in an instant. Humanity's wars were endless. Their history was carved in blood and conquest. The chamber was silent. "They do not fight like us," Zell-Ro continued. "We send armies to war with precision, with logic. But humans, they fight with something else, something primal, something that makes them stronger the more desperate the battle becomes." High Chancellor Varric Tan leaned forward, his voice filled with curiosity and hesitation. "And you believe they will fight for us?" Zell-Ro chuckled. "They won't do it for us. They will do it because war is what they were made for. They will do it because someone has given them an enemy." General Marcus Steele listened to the alien delegation's proposal, his expression unreadable. He had spent his entire career preparing for a war with another human nation, never imagining that first contact with an advanced species would come in the form of a desperate plea. "They're asking us to fight their war for them," Steele said, leaning back in his chair, "to throw our soldiers into a battle against an empire that has already crushed the greatest powers in the galaxy." Ambassador Zell-Ro sat across from him, hands folded. "Yes," he said, "that is exactly what we ask." Steele let out a breath and turned toward his aides. They were exchanging uncertain glances, but the truth was, they were considering it. Earth had spent centuries locked in conflicts of its own making. The Cold War, the World Wars, proxy wars, insurgencies. Humanity had developed warfare to an art form, always preparing for the next inevitable struggle. But now, for the first time in history, there was no war on Earth. Nations still postured and plotted, but true, large-scale war had been avoided. Perhaps too long. Humans weren't just good at war, they needed it. Steele turned back to the alien diplomat. "If we agree, if we go to war against this empire, what do we get in return?" Zell-Ro smiled. "A place among the stars, technology beyond your imagining, and a legacy that will never be forgotten." Steele exhaled slowly, thinking. Then, he tapped a button on the table. A holographic map of Earth's military forces appeared. "Then let me show you what you've just awakened," he said. "If you want warriors, we'll give you war gods." The night sky above Fort Kennedy, one of Earth's most advanced military bases, was alive with activity. Rows of gunmetal-gray dropships stood ready, their engines humming with barely restrained power. Squads of soldiers moved in formation, loading supplies, calibrating weapons, checking their gear. The ground trembled as exo-titans, massive bipedal war machines, were prepped for deployment. Humanity was going to war. General Marcus Steele stood on an elevated platform, overlooking the organized chaos below. Next to him, Ambassador Zell-Ro observed everything with a mix of awe and barely concealed fear. "How many soldiers will you send?" Zell-Ro asked. Steele didn't look away from his troops. "At first, 50,000. The ambassador's eyes widened in alarm. 50,000? That's suicide. The Zervians field millions in their war campaigns. They control entire fleets, planets, resources beyond comprehension." Steele smirked. "Yeah, and they've never fought humans before." Zell-Ro hesitated, then exhaled. "You're really confident in your species." Steele turned to him, eyes cold. "Ambassador, let me explain something to you. Every species in the galaxy evolved to survive. We evolved to conquer." He gestured towards the hangars, where elite units were boarding their transports. The Black Templars, the 3rd Helljumpers, the 7th Armored Lancers. "We don't just fight wars, we thrive in them. We study them, perfect them, make them art. You think we're outnumbered? Good. You think we're outgunned? Even better. The Zervians fight with brute strength. We fight with strategy, technology, and something your precious Galactic Council never understood: ruthlessness. Zell-Ro swallowed hard. I just hope you understand what you're unleashing. Steele grinned. Oh, we do. General Kavor of the Zervian Dominion sat atop his throne of polished skulls. The throne room was dimly lit, the air thick with the scent of blood and incense. His empire had crushed countless civilizations, subjugating weakling species that groveled at their feet. Now, the Galactic Council had made one final, pitiful attempt at resistance. They had called upon a species Kavor had barely even heard of. Humans. What do we know of them? He growled, his voice like grinding stone. A subordinate warrior stepped forward. Primitive, barely spacefaring. Their weapons are outdated, their ships slow, their numbers insignificant. Kavor let out a deep, rumbling laugh. Then this will be nothing more than another culling. The doors to the chamber burst open. A Zervian scout rushed in, panting heavily. His exoskeleton was covered in blood. My lord, the humans, they have arrived. Kavor raised a ridged brow. Already? The scout's mandibles clicked in agitation. It is unlike anything we have seen before. They do not fight like the others. An explosion rocked the fortress. The walls shook, dust and debris cascading from the ceiling. Kavor leapt to his feet. What in the void is happening? A transmission came through, crackling with static. Zervian forces in the outer defense line were screaming in fear. They came from the sky! Black-armored demons! Our weapons do nothing! Nothing! They're slaughtering us! Static. Silence. Kavor's eyes narrowed. He turned to his officers. Mobilize all forces. We will show these primates the meaning of true war. The UEN Dreadnought Warhammer floated silently, its dark silhouette blocking out the light from the planet's twin suns. Inside, General Steele watched the holographic display. The first wave of human forces had landed. Orbital drop troopers had descended from low orbit at terminal velocity, their powered exosuits absorbing the impact. They hit the ground like meteorites, already firing before their boots fully touched the surface. The Zervians were used to slow, methodical planetary invasions. They had never encountered shock warfare before. Steele smirked as he watched the feed from the ground. Zervian soldiers were breaking ranks. Their towering insectoid forms, once so confident, so arrogant, were now scrambling, running as human soldiers moved in tight formations, unleashing precision gunfire. A Zervian commander shouted orders, trying to rally his troops. A shadow moved behind him. A blade flashed. Blood sprayed. The commander collapsed, his throat slit. Standing behind him was a human in advanced adaptive camo armor. A ghost operative, one of Earth's most elite assassins. The soldier tapped his comm. Command, Ghost Team has infiltrated enemy headquarters, sending coordinates for orbital strike. Steele turned to his weapons officer. Send them a message. A moment later, the sky caught fire. Zervian fortifications erupted as orbital rail cannons fired from space. Entire regiments of warriors were vaporized in an instant. The very air burned. Zell-Ro watched from the command bridge, his hands trembling. This, he whispered, this isn't war. This is annihilation. Steele exhaled, watching the Zervian forces collapse in terror. Now you understand. On the battlefield below, the last Zervian warriors were falling back. A human soldier stood among the ruins, his rifle smoking. The battlefield was littered with alien corpses. Blood soaked the soil. He removed his helmet, revealing a scarred face, eyes cold as steel. A wounded Zervian warrior lay at his feet, panting heavily. His mandibles quivered as he stared up at the human. What are you? The alien rasped. The soldier kneeled, gripping his combat knife. "We're human." Then, he ended it. War had come to the stars, and the galaxy would never be the same. The fires of war still burned on Xiphos 3, but the battle was already won. The Zervian forces had been annihilated. Their fortress cities lay in ruins, their once proud legions now nothing more than smoking corpses. For the first time in the history of the Zervian dominion, they had not just suffered a defeat, they had been humiliated. The few Zervian survivors had fled into the mountains, retreating toward their remaining strongholds. But humanity did not believe in leaving survivors. General Steele stood on the bridge of the UEN Warhammer, watching a live feed of the ongoing operations. The Black Templars were conducting sweeps, tracking down the stragglers. In the dead of night, ghost operatives slipped into caves where the Zervians thought they were safe. Silent gunfire. Blades cutting throats. By dawn, not a single Zervian was left alive on Xiphos 3. It wasn't just a victory, it was a message. The air inside the Grand War Chamber was thick with tension. The Zervian High Warlords sat around a massive stone table, their exoskeletons twitching in agitation. Holographic projections flickered, showing real-time footage of Xiphos 3's destruction. Kavor stood, mandibles clicking in rage. "I demand an explanation," he roared. "We are the dominant species of this galaxy. No civilization has ever resisted us. No world has ever been taken from our grasp. Who are these humans?" A hologram of a Zervian intelligence officer flickered to life. His voice was tight with fear. "They are not what we believed them to be. We assumed them to be primitive, weak, incapable of large-scale warfare." A pause. We were wrong. Another projection appeared, grainy battle footage recovered from a fallen Zervian soldier's helmet. The High Warlords watched as human soldiers dropped from the sky like meteors, their rifles spewing precise bursts of armor-piercing fire. The camera feed jolted as a massive exo-titan stomped into frame, a walking behemoth of steel, bristling with cannons. A single barrage from its railguns tore through Zervian lines like paper. The last thing the Zervian soldier saw before the feed cut out was a human commando, his armor covered in blood, driving a combat knife straight through his skull. The chamber was silent. One of the younger warlords whispered, "They fight like us." "No." Kavor's voice was low, filled with something the others had never heard before. "Fear. They fight better than us." The room was filled with the heavy scent of cigar smoke and coffee. The military brass sat around a war table, holographic projections showing current and potential war fronts. General Steele leaned back in his chair. That was almost too easy. "They didn't expect us to be a threat," Admiral Vasquez replied. "They thought we'd break like every other species they've conquered." "Well, they know better now," Steele said. The door opened, and Ambassador Zell Rowe stepped in, flanked by 2 security officers. His reptilian face looked paler than usual. "They're preparing to retaliate," he said. Steele smirked. "Good." Zell Rowe exhaled sharply. "You don't understand. The Zervians have declared a blood war." The room fell silent. Zell Rowe continued, his voice urgent. "The last time the Zervians called a blood war, they exterminated an entire species. They do not negotiate. They do not take prisoners. They will mobilize everything to destroy you. Your entire planet is now a target." Steele exchanged a glance with the other military leaders. Then, to Zell Rowe's horror, he laughed. "You think that scares us?" Steele said. "Do you know how many times we've faced total annihilation in our history? Nuclear war, world wars, extinction events? We've survived them all." Zell Rowe shook his head. "This is different. The Zervians will burn entire continents. You must—" Steele slammed his fist on the table. "They will try." Then he stood, his eyes cold and calculating. "They want a blood war? Fine, we'll give them one." The Zervian First and Second War fleets moved through deep space, hundreds of dreadnoughts, and thousands of warships in perfect formation. Their orders were simple: destroy Earth, exterminate humanity, leave nothing behind. Cavor stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Devourer, staring at the swirling blue-green planet in the distance. "This world," he growled, mandibles clicking. "I want it reduced to ash." His fleet admiral nodded. "The humans have no chance. We outnumber them 1,000 to 1. They cannot possibly defend against this force." Cavor's mandibles twitched. "Then why," he said slowly, "does something feel wrong?" The Zervians thought humanity was weak. They thought Earth was just another primitive world, a ripe target for conquest. They never considered that humans might have been preparing for this moment all along. For the past 50 years, Earth's military-industrial complex had been building weapons beyond anything the rest of the galaxy had seen. Hidden beneath the moon's surface was Project Valkyrie, a classified weapons platform designed for one purpose: to annihilate an invading fleet before it even reached Earth. As the Zervian armada entered Earth's orbital range, Valkyrie went online. A single transmission was sent to the fleet: "Welcome to Earth." Then the sky erupted. Massive orbital railguns fired their first salvo, sending hyper-accelerated tungsten slugs tearing through Zervian warships like paper. Kinetic kill satellites unleashed swarms of hunter-seeker missiles, each programmed to track and eliminate the Zervian fleet's command ships. A Zervian dreadnought took a direct hit, its shields overloaded, its hull ripped apart in an instant. Explosions rippled across the fleet as Earth's defenses unleashed hell. Cavor's eyes widened as he watched ship after ship disintegrate under the onslaught. This wasn't a planetary defense grid. It was a planetary trap. As the Zervian fleet burned in orbit, Earth mobilized. Military bases across the planet activated hidden war assets, massive underground silos opening to reveal planetary defense cannons, railguns the size of skyscrapers, carrier-class warships rising from hidden bunkers. And then, the counterattack began. Across the world, massive jump gates powered up, opening direct wormholes to Zervian-controlled systems. Humanity wasn't just going to defend Earth. They were going to take the war to the enemy's doorstep. Cavor stared in horror as a massive human dreadnought emerged from a wormhole right next to his fleet. The last thing he heard before the battle began was a human voice, cold and mocking. "You wanted war? Then let's see if you can survive it." The Zervian fleet was in chaos. Hundreds of warships burned in orbit above Earth, their shattered hulls drifting aimlessly through space. What was supposed to be a swift planetary annihilation had turned into a massacre. And not for the humans. Cavor clutched the edge of his command throne, his mandibles twitching in disbelief. How? He bellowed as another Zervian dreadnought detonated in the void, torn apart by Earth's orbital defenses. Admiral Zarkoz, his second-in-command, stood frozen beside him. "We were told they were primitive, that they had no advanced fleets, no planetary defenses." His voice trembled. "They have outplayed us at every step. We never even saw their true strength until it was too late." Cavor watched in horror as more wormholes began opening, not just in orbit, but in deep space, directly behind Zervian lines. Then, the real onslaught began. Earth's war machine had finally been unleashed. Dreadnoughts the size of mountains emerged from jump gates, their sleek, dark hulls built for brutal efficiency. Strike squadrons of stealth fighters wove between enemy formations, launching micro-missiles that tore through Zervian ships like razor wire through flesh. And then came the boarding pods. The Zervians barely had time to react before hundreds of drop pods smashed into the sides of their warships, each one carrying a squad of human shock troopers. Within moments, the Zervian fleet became a battlefield from the inside out. Zervian warriors rushed through their own hallways, their chitinous armor slick with blood, as humans tore through them with close-quarters combat tactics the galaxy had never seen before. A Black Templar swung a vibroblade through a Zervian officer's throat, kicking the corpse aside before unloading his rifle into a squad of incoming warriors. A ghost operative decloaked inside the enemy command center, knifing one Zervian in the back before silencing the entire bridge crew with suppressed rounds. Everywhere, the same message was clear. Humanity didn't just want victory, they wanted domination. Inside the Devourer, Kavor watched as his fleet collapsed around him. His officers were screaming. The Zervian war machine, an empire built on millennia of conquest, was being systematically dismantled by a species they had never even considered a threat. Something stirred in Kavor's chest. Something alien, something Zervians were never supposed to feel. Doubt. He turned to Zarkoz, his mandibles twitching. "This is not war, this is—" He exhaled, his body trembling. "Extermination." Zarkoz stepped forward hesitantly. "We must fall back. If we retreat to Zervian Prime, we can regroup and—" His words were cut off by a sudden power fluctuation. Kavor's eyes widened. The lights flickered. A deep, low humming filled the bridge. "What is that?" he growled. Zarkoz checked the data feed, his face draining of color. "They've breached the ship." Kavor barely had time to react before the blast doors imploded, and humans stepped onto the bridge. Kavor stared at the figure in front of him. A human. Not just any human. A warrior, clad in black war plate, his rifle slung across his back. A long combat knife dripped with blood in his right hand. General Marcus Steele. Behind Steele, more human Black Templars stepped onto the bridge, their weapons raised, their armor smeared with Zervian blood. Kavor roared, drawing his twin plasma blades. "I will kill you with my own hands, human!" Steele smirked. "You can try." Kavor lunged, swinging with the brute force of a warlord, but Steele was faster. He ducked, sidestepped, and drove his blade into Kavor's side. The warlord stumbled, black ichor oozing from the wound. He tried to strike again, but Steele caught his wrist, twisted, and snapped it. Kavor roared in agony. He swung wildly, but Steele dodged effortlessly. And then, the killing blow. Steele buried his knife into Kavor's throat and twisted. The warlord gurgled, mandibles twitching, his eyes full of rage and disbelief. With a final ragged breath, Kavor collapsed. The warlord of the Zervian fleet was dead. Steele stepped over the corpse, wiping his blade clean. He turned to his men. "Secure the ship. Kill anyone still breathing." By the end of the battle, less than 5% of the Zervian fleet remained. Most of them ran. Cowardly, desperate to escape humanity's wrath. But the humans were not done. The counter-invasion had already begun. Jump gates opened across Zervian space, spilling out human warships. Planetary defenses fell within hours. For the first time in history, the Zervian Dominion, the most feared empire in the galaxy, was on the brink of extinction. And the humans? They were just getting started. The Zervian Dominion was collapsing. For centuries, their empire had thrived on bloodshed. They had subjugated countless civilizations, their warriors feared as the deadliest force in the galaxy. But now, they were the ones being hunted. The Zervian homeworld, Zervian Prime, stood at the heart of their empire. A fortress world, encased in impenetrable defenses, surrounded by the largest fleet ever assembled. At least that's what they thought, because humanity was coming, and there would be no mercy. The Grand War Chamber was in chaos. The remaining warlords screamed over each other, their mandibles twitching in desperation. Red emergency lights cast eerie shadows over the carved stone walls, the room thick with the scent of burning incense and fear. "They are coming!" one warlord hissed, slamming his fist against the table. "They have already taken 6 systems in 3 days! 6 systems!" "They fight like demons," another one whispered, trembling. "We send fleets, they destroy them. We send armies, they vanish. They do not fight for territory, they fight to kill." A holographic projection flickered to life, displaying the full-scale human invasion spreading across Zervian space. Their warships moved like predators, striking deep behind enemy lines, destroying supply routes, orbital platforms, entire garrisons. Wherever humans arrived, Zervian planets burned. "We must surrender," one warlord croaked, his voice barely above a whisper. The room fell silent. Then, the doors slammed open. A Zervian warrior stumbled in, his armor soaked in blood. He collapsed to his knees, gasping. "The humans!" he wheezed, mandibles shaking. The warlord stared. "They're already here." The UEN dreadnought Warhammer loomed over the Zervian homeworld like a god of death. Hundreds of human warships emerged from jump gates, forming a blockade around the planet. General Steele stood on the bridge, his hands clasped behind his back, watching his masterpiece unfold. The Zervians had no idea how to react. They were used to fighting weaker species, creatures that begged for their lives, planets that surrendered before the first shot was even fired. But humanity wasn't here to negotiate. Humanity was here to end them. Steele turned to his fleet admiral. "Are the orbital cannons primed?" "Aye, sir. Targeting every major city." "Fire." The sky erupted. Massive tungsten slugs rained down from orbit, punching through Zervian cities like meteor strikes. Skyscrapers crumbled. Entire districts were wiped off the map in an instant. Zervian soldiers scrambled to return fire, but there was nothing to shoot. The humans were still in orbit, picking them apart from the sky. Then came the drop pods. Thousands of them. They fell like a storm, crashing into the ruined cities. Before the dust even settled, human soldiers burst from the wreckage. Guns blazing, blades slicing through armor, grenades turning defensive positions into vapor. Zervian warlords screamed orders, sending their greatest warriors into battle. But they didn't understand. This wasn't a war. This was extermination. Deep inside the Zervian war palace, High Warlord Jarun prepared for battle. He was the last of the old guard, the last true warlord of his people. He had fought in over 1,000 campaigns, conquered entire star systems with his own hands. And now, he stood alone in the ruins of his throne room, gripping his twin plasma scimitars. The doors blew apart. Humans stormed in. At the front, General Steele. Their eyes met. No words were spoken. Jarun charged. Steele sidestepped the first swing, his blade flashing. Blood splattered across the stone floor as one of Jarun's arms was severed. The warlord howled, spinning for another strike. Steele caught his wrist, twisted, and drove his knife into Jarun's chest. The Zervian staggered. He stared down at the blade buried in his chest, then up at Steele. "You," he gurgled, "are demons." Steele ripped the knife free. Jarun collapsed. The last warlord of the Zervian Dominion was dead. The destruction of Zervian Prime sent shockwaves across the stars. The once mighty Zervian Dominion, the greatest war machine in the galaxy, was gone. But the war wasn't over. The Galactic Council watched in horrified silence as footage of the invasion spread. A message was sent to every remaining Zervian outpost, every remaining colony world. Steele's voice was calm, cold. "Your empire is over. Surrender now or share your homeworld's fate." Some Zervians fled, some resisted. None survived. The war lasted 6 months. By the end, not a single Zervian world remained under their control. Those that surrendered were spared. Those that resisted were eradicated. For the first time in galactic history, a new empire had risen. Humanity. And the galaxy would never be the same again. Steele stood on the balcony of the Zervian War Palace, now repurposed as the capital of humanity's new empire. Zell-Ro, the alien ambassador who had once pleaded for humanity's help, stood beside him, his face pale. "You have reshaped the galaxy," Zell-Ro murmured. Steele took a slow breath, staring at the burning remains of the Zervian Empire. "They wanted a war," he said. He turned, his eyes cold, ruthless. "We gave them gods." The Zervian Dominion was no more. Once the most feared war machine in the galaxy, it had been systematically dismantled by humanity in a war that lasted less than a year. Their homeworld, Zervian Prime, lay in ruins, their mighty fleets turned to floating wreckage, their warlords either dead or kneeling before their new masters. For the first time in recorded history, a new empire had risen, and at its heart stood humanity. From the shattered remains of the old order, the United Earth Dominion, UED, was born. The Galactic Council, once the ruling body of interstellar civilization, had become obsolete overnight. Where once they had debated policies and treaties, now they simply obeyed. Human warships patrolled the core worlds. Black-armored soldiers stood watch in every major system. The message was clear. Humanity was not a passing storm. They were the new rulers of the stars. And yet, despite their total victory, despite standing as undisputed war gods, Steele knew one undeniable truth. This was just the beginning. Ambassador Zell-Ro walked the halls of the new Imperial War Complex on Zervian Prime, now renamed Terra Ultima. He had been there from the start. He had begged humanity to join the war. And now, as he looked at what they had built, he wondered if he had made a mistake. He found General Steele standing in the command chamber, staring at a massive holographic display of the galaxy. "Is it over?" Zell-Ro asked quietly. Steele didn't look at him. "Wars don't just end, they evolve." Zell-Ro frowned. "The Zervians are gone. No force in the galaxy can oppose you. What else is left to fight?" Steele turned, his cold blue eyes locking onto the ambassador. "You think the galaxy will accept human rule forever?" he asked. "Right now they kneel, not because they want to, but because they fear what happens if they don't." Zell-Ro swallowed hard. "And if that fear fades?" Steele's gaze darkened. "Then we remind them." Deep in the uncharted void, past the known edges of the galaxy, something stirred. A Zervian remnant fleet, hidden for decades, received the final transmission from Zervian Prime before its fall. Aboard the last warship, a new warlord rose. Jakor, son of Kavor, stared at the screen, watching the footage of his father's humiliating death at human hands. His claws dug into his throne. "They think they have won," he growled. "They think they are safe." His warriors hissed in agreement. "Let them rule," Jakor murmured. "Let them grow comfortable." Then his mandibles curled into a savage grin. "When the time is right, we will remind them what true war looks like." Back on Terra Ultima, Steele stood alone in his war room, the galaxy laid out before him. He had won. Humanity had won. But deep down, he felt it. An emptiness. Peace. The absence of war. It was unnatural. He exhaled, gripping the edge of the war table. There would always be another fight. Another enemy. Another war. And humanity? Humanity would always be ready.